things like LinkedIn are awesome. We almost always have like some sort of job posting up there just to at least like build a bench, right? Not everyone's ready for a role right away. So it's good to like start going through that pieces, trying to create like a little bit of a scoring system. So like, eventually when you do a posting, sometimes you get, 100 resumes, right? And it's like, that's a lot to kind of sift through. And you're usually hiring because you need to hire, right? So you're already busy. So this is extra work on top of that.
Hey, thanks for tuning in to the Master Delegator podcast. Today, I am with Daniel Tejada. He runs an agency called Straight Up Growth, where they have sold over $500 million on Amazon, and he has managed almost $500 million on Amazon on his own. They're looking to continue his agency's growth to $700 million this year. Straight Up Growth is a boutique agency focused on helping brands grow their business on the world's largest search engine, Amazon. Based in San Diego, California, their team is proud of delivering exceptional work while maintaining an easygoing culture with great benefits and better work-life balance. And in today's episode, we are going to talk about a lot of things, I'm sure, but we are mainly going to focus on how he was able to scale his team virtually while keeping quality service, and how he was able to handle rapid growth in business. So Daniel, welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me on today, Kristy.
Yes, you're welcome. I'm super curious about how you got started in your business. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So, I came from the agency world and specifically Amazon agencies. So I've worked at, kind of two others previously. And then, right before COVID, actually back in February, we decided to start our own kind of business. It was a little scary because COVID hit. And so there was like 4 months of like absolutely no revenue, no phone calls coming in. And you're like, did we make the right decision? But here we are a couple of years later, and definitely been able to figure it out. We've got 30 employees now at this point. So I've been able to scale it remotely, which is interesting. I'm sure we're going to chat through that as well.
That is awesome. So you have now 30 team members. Oh, I'm so curious more now. I mean, I'm more curious now how you were able to build your agency, successfully in the last 2 years. And so, why did you need to hire people to help you in your business?
Yeah, great question. I think it's like when you go from what I call a lifestyle business to kind of a real
to a hobby
not that
business.
it's not real. Yeah. But like to like kind of scale it and get ready to sell at some point and things like that. You need to be able to hire in order to scale, right? There's only one of me, I only had one business partner, right? And it doesn't matter, eventually the hours run out, and it wasn't that we weren't working long hours. We definitely were, but ultimately there came a point where if we wanted to scale this, right, and really start to grow, we needed to start hiring. And then more specifically, I think as once you make that first hire, then it becomes important to start segmenting like different departments, right? And different, I think, tasks that you do on a day-to-day basis, right? Like I do sales, I was also doing operations, right? And actually like putting hand on keyboard on like optimizing campaigns and things like that. Eventually you have enough clients that there's just not time in the day, right, for you to manage it. And so ultimately scaling, requires actually hiring to make that happen.
Yeah, that is so true. I mean, sometimes in business, when you really want to scale, you don't have any choice but to delegate or to hire team members, right? And I feel
Exactly.
like if you have an agency, it's automatic that you're going to have team members. Otherwise, you're not going to call yourself an agency. And so, how were you able to find these 30 team members that you have who are working for you remotely?
Yeah, great question. So, things like LinkedIn are awesome. We almost always have like some sort of job posting up there just to at least like build a bench, right? Not everyone's ready for a role right away. So it's good to like start going through that pieces, trying to create like a little bit of a scoring system. So like, eventually when you do a posting, sometimes you get, 100 resumes, right? And it's like, that's a lot to kind of sift through, and you're usually hiring because you need to hire, right? there. So you're already busy. So this is extra work on top of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So trying to stay organized. We created a little scoring system that helped, at least for some of the entry level stuff there. And then really from there, we just kind of, do our interviews. We've got, at this point, 3 people on our team, kind of 3 different interviews get done there. And we kind of make a decision from there. We have a couple other things that as we've scaled, like we've used a recruiter, if we're really in a time crunch and things from time to time. But I think honestly, just getting some resumes in, having some sort of way of organizing it, because otherwise you could, you can go crazy, and also cutting the resumes off, right? Like eventually it's like you have enough leads in there, look through, see what you have. Sometimes it's, not the right fit, but you can kind of revisit it. But otherwise just spend too much time just looking through resumes, in my experience, and not enough time actually like hopping on the call with them and just figuring out if they're worth, a good fit or not.
Right. And these individuals that working for you right now, are they all based out of here in the States, or they're scattered among different countries?
Almost everyone is in the US. We do have like 3 developers in the Ukraine, actually, there specifically. So, and they're still cranking away somehow, even with all the craziness going on. So I think I'll say our development team's out there, but everyone else is in the US currently.
That's awesome. And so when you look for a team member, and you mentioned that you now have like 3 different people interviewing them, as a part of your recruitment process, what is that one thing, you're non-negotiable when it comes to like adding somebody in your team?
Yeah, great question. I would say like their attitude there is usually one of the more important pieces. Like, a lot of what we do can be taught, right? There at the end of the day, like, most people don't have Amazon experience. The ones that do a lot of times don't do it the way that's in line with our strategies. So it's almost like we have to retrain you anyway. But if you have the right attitude, right, you're driven there, that can make up for, not necessarily having that much experience, right? On that piece. So definitely attitude is a huge one. Experience is kind of secondary in our the way we kind of look at it, I guess, on our end.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you, because we also do the same, 60% character, 40% skills,
I like that.
because how can you use somebody who's very skilled when that person is not showing up every day, right? So that totally makes sense that you look for somebody with the right attitude. And so let's talk about just scaling your team. I mean, scaling your business with your team. What was the very first thing that you assigned to your virtual assistant or team member? I don't know how you call them.
Question.
Yeah. And why?
So the first thing was I had an intern. We assigned keyword research there, which is essentially when we're looking at a product to advertise, we go off of the existing data, but we also have our own process for like identifying what terms could make sense, right? So they're essentially educated guesses. So I had her kind of do that. It's very specific as to why it's the first task. One, it like, something that we just need to do in general when we launch a new client. But when we do our training, right, we like to train in little blocks, right? And it's like understanding these little pieces tied into the fundamental is ultimately what kind of allows that person to eventually be managing, hundreds, if not millions of dollars of spend there, right? But we start with little pieces there. They're kind of like, it's kind of like Legos, right? And you're just kind of like stacking Legos on top until you have built what you want. So yeah, that was probably the first of our first hire. That was probably the first task she did. It's almost one of our first go-tos for whenever we hire someone new there.
It's so hard when you do your own keyword research because it's very administrative and it can take a lot of your time, so that makes sense that that would be your first hire because there's a lot of things that you need to focus on as the founder CEO of your agency. And so how did you make sure that I know you talked about attitude is the most important thing to you, but how do you make sure that during the interview process that you're able to assess when a person has the right attitude or not?
Yeah, great question. There's a couple questions I have. Like one question that tends to work well is, tell me about a time when a client or stakeholder was not happy with performance and what did you do to handle it, right? there. And a lot of the times you can tell a lot by how people answer, right? Like if they're like, oh, I never have that issue or things like that, then you're like, okay, well, this is probably not true, right? Everybody has some situation that they've had, even if it's a small
Yeah.
one, right? So there's a lot of things you can tell from that. I also like to ask folks like what they're looking to work on, not just in the immediate short term, but what they're looking to work on in the future, right? And that's a good way of kind of getting a sense of where their ambitions at, right?
Mhm.
There, if they're looking at, look, I'm here, but I want to eventually be to this type of position or whatever, right? Usually I can tell they kind of got a more of a winning attitude to kind of get towards their goals. So yeah, it's not perfect, but it's definitely something that's
Yeah.
helpful. I also asked this really random, it sounds like a weird question, but I have a goal behind it, which is what's your favorite ice cream flavor and why? Or if you were an ice cream, what flavor would you be and why? And it's silly, but like I actually pay attention a lot to how they answer on that one because it gives you a sense of like how flexible is this person, right? And like what kind of attitude they have or something ridiculous or something like
Yeah.
that. So,
And how quick they can think as well, because that is a very uh not normal question, uncommon
exactly.
question. There you go. That's a term that I was looking for. It's a very
Yep.
uncommon question, so that they're not ready for that. I love that
Exactly.
question. Yeah.
Yeah, it throws them off, but it's fun. But there's actually a lot that I take from that question,
Yeah.
surprisingly. Yeah.
So it's kind of the same with us as well, because like what I mentioned, character, attitude, it's the most important thing for us in our agency. And so we are very um strict when it comes to making sure that a person or an applicant or a candidate fits into our culture and that they are in alignment with our core values. And so we are team players, in our team, and teamwork is just something that we want to see when it comes to like interviewing candidates. And so we have a question that's kind of like, how do you go the extra mile even though you know that you're being inconvenienced, because a lot of
Oh,
times
okay, I
when
like
you're
that.
working
Yeah.
within a team, you help out other people, and even though you have other tasks to do, and to us it's very important that you're willing to collaborate and give support to your team members as well, because it's not, we don't want the me mentality, the selfish mentality. you know when when you need something, you're going to ask help from other people, but if other people needs help, then you're like, oh, I don't have time. We don't have a
Right,
me
right, right,
me attitude
right.
or a me mentality. Yeah,
That's
so
good. I like that.
thank you.
Are you sick and tired of being overwhelmed and afraid you'll never scale your business? Meet Smart VAs. Unlike many virtual assistant agencies that only assign one dedicated virtual assistant, we provide flexibility for growing businesses by assigning a team of experienced virtual assistants that can do different tasks to support your continuous growth. Visit smartvas.online to book a free discovery call and start growing your business.
So you had a rapid growth in your business in the last 2 years. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so it's been we're very fortunate. It definitely comes with its own challenges for sure.
Oh
When we
yeah.
grow that quickly. There and making sure we scale the team, making sure we were hiring aggressively enough, make sure we're training properly when we get people coming on board, can definitely be a fun task that we've had to work through, but definitely got ourselves to a good place. I'll say like, there's a couple things that have helped. Like one, we have a pretty robust kind of even before we land a client sales process. So we actually do like a pretty aggressive audit, really outline, kind of what's working, what's not. It also allows us to set expectations with our clients and know that we can make an impact and not just like, hey, we've done this for other brands, but not every brand is exactly the same, right? Everyone's going to have their own challenges. So I think that audit work is helpful because we have a lot of wins and we have a lot of happy clients that are willing to make introductions to new clients for us, right? And things like that. And also we can use those wins to like in our outbound messages and things like that. So I'd say just doing a good job has been helpful, honestly, at the end of the day for our brands. LinkedIn has been awesome. Really,
Mhm.
really love LinkedIn as a channel. Been able to do some good biz dev there. And then partnerships. We've got quite a few partners here. Like, we're good at what we do. But we also know that we want to help our clients ultimately any way we can. So, we're always looking for partners we can refer out to and things like that. And that's definitely been a very fruitful kind of endeavor for us as well.
Yeah, that's a nice story. I started my I started my agency like in 2019, and then later that year the pandemic started, right? So we also had a rapid growth because virtual assistants have become so
Huge.
popular,
Yeah.
during the pandemic. And so we went through rapid growth, and it just like what you said, the more you grow your business, the more you grow your problem. There's a lot of challenges, and sometimes as a business owner, you think sometimes you doubt whether you're doing the right thing. Like, should I stop? Should I slow down? But the opportunities there. You have to like pivot quickly and make sure that you have the right people, processes, and systems in place to help support your rapid growth. And I am just so impressed that just by the last 2 years you have now been able to hire 30 team members. And so how does that look like right now? Do you have like an agency structure? Like, are you the one managing those 30 people, or do you have
Yeah.
like
So no, I have
project managers?
yeah, great question. So I've got an agency structure at this point. There I've got teams like I don't do like anything in our operations like day to day, for example,
Mm.
like in terms of like execution for clients. Now I'm still like overseeing our sales teams, for example, but got like a VP of operations, Scott Marco, who's on my team. He oversees, a couple managers on his end that are then kind of dealing with different departments and stuff like that. We added content recently, right? So that department's not as built out, right? So he's probably a little bit more hands-on till the scales, and then eventually we hire someone to kind of run that piece and go from there. But yeah, we're at the point where we're finally starting to have like some managers and directors and things like that, which is
That's
gives you
awesome.
a chance to breathe.
Yeah,
Like,
that's awesome, because that's also something that an agency should have. Even if you have 10 or 20, 30, or 100, you need to have a structure that people can see and people can follow. And so how did you go from doing your clients projects to now just running your business? Like, what were the adjustments that you had to make?
yeah,
Because I'm pretty sure it wasn't easy at first, right?
no, 100%. Yeah, and it takes time. It's not an overnight thing, but ultimately it comes down to hiring, then training, right? There. So it's probably the what I call the least efficient part is like right in the middle, where you're like, you've hired them, you're paying them to do the job, right? And they may not know how to do the job yet, right? Or they're working towards it. So it's really important to like give your team the time. It's easy sometimes to be like, oh, well, I could just do this part myself, right? But ultimately it's like when you run into those kind of tasks, take the time, do a call, do the training, do the follow-up, and then eventually you can give them that task, more and more frequently. I'll say there.
Yeah. And so now that you have a structure, did your team members wonder why there is so much change in the agency? Because you
Uh,
know, because if you're
I
putting
guess,
managers, supervisors, like, are they
yeah,
did they ask you questions like, hey,
I
why
think
am I
we're very
reporting to somebody now?
I think we're very transparent about why we're doing the things that we do, right? And being with that growth. So because we're kind of over communicating with the team, that definitely gives us a little bit of flexibility, right? And that they're understanding, ultimately, this isn't because we're not doing bad, like you're doing a bad job, right? This is because we need this to ensure that our business, scales the way it does, right? And we started with little clients, and now we're going into bigger and bigger clients, and so it's important to have that expertise, as we do so. And so far, it's worked out, and we've had some pretty good employee retention besides client retention there. So that's, I
That's
guess, something that's
awesome.
working out so far.
That's awesome. So have you ever had to fire somebody?
Yeah, yeah. We have one person so far there. So that's always tough, but like I think you got to do it. You also have to be like at the end of the day, it's we give people a chance, right? We put the employee on the purport, kind of a PIP plan and things like that. It just didn't work out in the long run there. So I could say that we honestly did our best towards it, but sometimes it's just not the right fit too, right? And so you need to be, I think it's important as a business owner to be strong enough to be able to pull that off, when needed.
That's true. Yeah. There's just a lot of things that go into becoming a business owner, right? Like some people,
Yeah,
they
things you
think
don't think about.
yeah, some people, they think I want to run my own business. I have an idea, but they don't think about, okay, you're gonna hire people. If they don't work the way how you want it to, then you're gonna fire them. You're gonna give them feedback, coaching, and a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And so when
Yeah.
somebody, and that's why I'm not really afraid if one of my team members want to like start their own, because I'm like, go ahead.
Yeah.
Like,
No, good. Yeah.
go ahead. It's like,
Yeah.
you think it's easy? It's not, it's not, because owning a business is not for the faint of heart. Um,
Absolutely.
it's tough if you don't have the right support that you need in order to grow. And so how do you delegate to your team members now?
At this point, it's like I delegate on the areas of my department that are important, right? And then I also deal with the leadership team to kind of like, execute on certain things, right? So rather than like talking to every single person on the team, right, I got to trust my managers to really be able to push through the stuff that we're talking through. But so far so good, at that for sure.
That's awesome. And I think one thing that you really need to have when you want to delegate is to trust your team members. And so how did you learn how to trust your team members?
I think it comes over time. I think that naturally, like, there's things you can do to check on work, right? Like, hey, can you do this thing? Can you send it to me before you send it to the client, right? You can give it a look through and kind of give them feedback. So usually I think like some of those more micro tasks where you're hand holding a little bit, there you're kind of verifying that this is turning out okay. And then you just have to trust them ultimately, and then I think the longer they do things, the more trust you'll have. Not to say you can't get burned. There's definitely situations where the employee will make a mistake or things like that, but you also have to think about like where you were at, right? And it's not like you've never made a mistake either. It's about
Right.
like, did they understand why there, so that they're not going to do it in the future, and kind of run with it from there.
That's true. I love that. And just knowing that they are also people, they're human beings, they make mistakes, and you give them a chance, and you also give them a chance to get to know you better as the business owner.
Exactly.
All right. Well, this has been so much fun. So, where
Thank
can
you.
people find you online, Daniel?
They can find me on LinkedIn under Daniel Tejada. Can also find me at straightupgrowth.com is our website. Just feel free to give us a shout out. Happy to chat Amazon or growth anytime.
Yes, cool. I'll include those links in the show notes. Thank you so much for your time, Daniel.
Thank you, Kristy. It was great speaking.